Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for our online academic orientation. This session is suited for students entering the humanities and social science fields in particular. My name is Jessica, and I'm a fourth-year student studying history and English at U of T. And I'm joined today by Professor Orwin, who I'll let further introduce himself.
I'm Clifford Orwin. I'm professor of political science. I'm cross-appointed to classics and to Jewish studies. I'm a fellow of St. Mike's and have been for decades now. I cherish that connection very much. I'm also affiliated with two universities abroad, the Portuguese Catholic University in Lisbon and the University of Bochum in Germany. So I spend part of each year at those two universities. But I spend most of my time here. My basic affiliation is with the U of T.
That's great. Well, we're so lucky to have you at U of T, so thank you so much for that. So I was wondering if you could share with the students watching which first-year courses you teach and other courses that you teach.
Sure. I teach PAL 200Y, Visions of the Just Society, which is a year-long introduction to the history of political thought. And it's required of all political science students, specialists, majors, and minors. So it's a very large course, and I'm assisted by a very able core of teaching assistants. It's billed as a second-year course, but it's open to first-year students. And I would say that each year, about 10% of the students who take it are first year. And interestingly, first-year students actually do better on average in the course than second-year students, perhaps because they're self-selected. But in any case, if you're interested in, I'd encourage you to take it during your first year because it opens the door to all subsequent courses in political theory. And as I say, it's required of all political science students. So if you're going to be a political science student, you might as well get it out of the way early.
Absolutely. Sounds like a perfect opportunity to kind of start in the field of political science. So that's great. So do you have any advice that you would give to first-year students entering into this program? This could be any advice such as studying habits, scheduling, or any other general advice that you have for them.
Well, study habits are crucial. Study habits really will determine your success at the university or not. I had terrible study habits as an undergraduate, and I was a terrible student. I had to make up for that later on. Study habits means, I think, above all, two things. Don't fall behind in your courses, keep up with them, and learn to budget your time, which you'll have to do in order to keep up with every course. You've got to be prepared to work on every course every week. And as I say, give yourself a budget to make sure that you don't neglect any of those courses. That really is the crucial advice that I'd give to first-year students. If you develop good study habits in high school, so much the better. But if you haven't, that really is going to be crucial to your success at university.
Yeah, I agree. I think scheduling is something that's so important, and it really just sets a good foundation to start it off in first year. So that's great advice. So what do you think, if students could remember one thing coming in to university from high school, what would you say they should remember during their first year?
That the first year is the most difficult. And the most difficult because it requires the greatest adjustments. My own sons had very, very difficult first years, but then went on to great success as undergraduates thereafter. So I think the main thing to remember during the first year is that the second, third, and fourth years, in fact, won't be as demanding. So you can look forward to that. But first year can be very trying, just because there is a big adjustment between even the best high schools and university, and that adjustment has to be negotiated. Yeah,
definitely. It's a huge transition, and so it could be overwhelming for a lot of students, but it's something that they need to be prepared for, definitely. So that's a great tip to remember.
One thing that I would add to that, because this university is so big, and because it is so big, therefore it's inevitably somewhat impersonal, you shouldn't hesitate to take advantages of the resources that are available to you in counseling or otherwise. First of all, at St. Mike's, because this is something that the colleges do. But also, you shouldn't hesitate to reach out to your professors for help or advice. And if you're in a large course, often students will begin with their teaching assistant as the first resource to which to turn for help and advice. That makes perfect sense. You will get to know the teaching assistant better than you'll get to know the course instructor. Again, that's just an inevitable structural fact. But you shouldn't hesitate to reach out to the course instructor as well. And if you're having difficulties, don't hesitate to communicate them to your teachers.
That's great. I know that for me personally, in second and third year, I started to form kind of a better relationship with some professors and some teaching assistants, and I was more confident to approach them, and it definitely changed all of my courses for me. It made a huge improvement in all my courses. So that's great advice. So if you can kind of put yourself in the student's shoes for a second, what challenges do you think that they faced in this program, and what solutions could you advise to them?
Well, I think the biggest challenge that one faces in political science is simply that as a discipline, it covers such a broad range of both topics and approaches. So I think this is true of the social sciences generally, and I think it actually may be true of academic departments generally, that the disciplinary boundaries are somewhat misleading if you think that in a given discipline, every professor is going to do the same things or do them in the same way, or even in ways that much resemble each other, because that's not the way it is. Every discipline harbors a great many different approaches, and therefore every course is demanding in a different way. And that variety is one of the best things about the discipline of political science, in my opinion. That intellectual, that methodological pluralism, you might call it, is one of the best things about political science. But it does make great demands on the student, because it means that the world of one course is, really quite different from the world of another course, and you've got to adjust to these different worlds.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. So something that's really different in university than high school is office hours, which a lot of students might not know too much about. So could you kind of explain what are office hours, and if a student finds office hours a little bit intimidating, what should they do?
Okay, well, office hours are the best way for you to get to know your teachers better. They're also the best way for your teachers to get to know you better. And office hours are very much student-driven, because you'll come to the office and you'll pose a question, and the teacher will reply. So it's a great way to explore whatever issues came up in the classroom, which for some reason or other you didn't want to bring up publicly, or which there simply wasn't time to air sufficiently. Office hours give you that opportunity to speak to the professor privately rather than publicly, and also, again, to pursue subjects in greater depth. It's going to be a little different this fall, the way everything's going to be different, because presumably we're going to be beginning holding office hours electronically, or most professors will. I myself am planning to hold my office hours physically. I'm compelled to lecture electronically because every course as big as mine is as PAL 200 is under a mandate to be electronic this coming year. But I'll very much miss the contact with the students, and therefore I am going to try to hold the office hours in the old way, simply maintaining the requisite physical distancing.
Of course.
If students are intimidated, I would say don't be. But if you are, the best way to get over that intimidation is to attend the office hours and to learn firsthand that they're not nearly as intimidating as you thought. If you're taking a big two-tier course, as it were, like PAL 200, that's divided into lectures and tutorials, the TAs who hold tutorials will also hold office hours. And they too, this coming year, will have the choice of holding them either physically or electronically. So I would say, certainly you shouldn't feel intimidated about visiting your TA's office hours. But I would also say you shouldn't feel intimidated about visiting the lecturer's office hours. And we hold the office hours so that students will visit us. We're disappointed if you don't. You shouldn't think that we regard students visiting us during office hours as some kind of imposition on our time, because they're not, right? We're there to hold office hours, so we hope that people will come.
That's great. That's something that I learned too in my own experience. I have to admit, I was a little intimidated to talk to some of my professors, but after attending some office hours and talking to the professors more about the courses, it made the entire course and the professor so much less intimidating, and it just really helped me in the whole course. So I think that office hours are definitely something that students should really take advantage of, because like you said, they're there for them, and you're just there to help them. So that's great. So our next question for you is, would you encourage students to get involved in extracurriculars? And if so, what kind of extracurriculars would you encourage them to take a part of?
I have mixed feelings about extracurriculars. I taught for a year at Harvard, and Harvard is a place where the students seem to be there primarily for the extracurriculars. They're there primarily to network, et cetera, et cetera. And you often got the feeling that classes at Harvard were just something that people attended in between extracurriculars, which was not the best situation. And a lot of the best Harvard students complained about it, by the way.
Oh, interesting.
And, the problem with extracurriculars is they threaten to become the tail that wags the dog, because you become committed to the extracurricular, and you then find that you don't have enough time for your courses, but you've become committed to the extracurricular, so mm-hmm. it becomes a problem. Obviously, there's going to, I don't even know what's going to become of extracurriculars this coming year, again, because of the problem that mm-hmm. most extracurriculars will probably exist only electronically. And therefore will be only a shadow of their former selves, just as courses won't be quite what they should be, because we won't be meeting personally. It might be prudent to wait until the second semester to commit yourself to extracurriculars, simply because by then you'd have a better notion of how much time you have to devote to them. So again, I think that they're fine for those who can afford them, but I think they've been the undoing of many students. Because it's not as if it's easy just to take 5 courses. It's not, right? If those courses are as demanding as they should be, that's really a full-time job in itself. And again, if you have time left over for extracurriculars, that's great, but you should remember that extracurriculars are something that require that you have time left over for them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And just to add on to what you're saying, I think that it's really important to, if you are participating in extracurriculars, to find a good balance between them and obviously the 5 courses that you are taking, or whatever course load you are taking.
When I say that I have mixed feelings, I realize that extracurriculars can be very valuable. If you have something to which you're devoted and the extracurricular offers you an opportunity to pursue it within the context of the university, that's fine. Mm-hmm. This year, I learned of something which I thought was really delightful, which was that some students from last year's PAL 200 founded a discussion group, the purpose of which was to sort of perpetuate the discussion of the issues that PAL 200 raised. So this was a completely new extracurricular that was called simply discussion. and it was founded by this core of PAL 200 alumni, but they then attracted a number of students who hadn't taken PAL 200, were just interested in the big issues that they were discussing. And mm-hmm. they met every week, and each week they invited 2 faculty, sort of faculty catalysts or initiators to participate in the discussion. So I attended with my colleague and friend, Professor Melissa Williams, for a discussion of what makes a great society. Wow. It was a lot of fun. And this, again, a new initiative coming from these students. Mm-hmm. So, there's a vast variety of extracurriculars at the university, obviously. And again, I don't mean to deny that they are good and useful and fun and rewarding, but you just shouldn't get carried away with them.
Definitely. I think that's great advice for sure. And that sounds like a fun initiative that they started. So you've given us a lot of really great advice and pointers for the first year students. But if you can give us one tip of success for incoming students in your specific program, what would they be? And this could be whether students decide to take the graduate route after or just enter into the workforce, whatever their goal might be. What is one tip of success that you would give them?
All right, I'm going to say two things.
Oh,
One
sure.
of which is much more prosaic than the other, much more practical than the other. The prosaic practical thing would be go with the flow of whatever course you're taking. Because I have to stress, again, that the courses in political science are varied. And of course, even if you're a political science specialist, you'll also be taking courses in other disciplines, which will be different from political science courses and varied among themselves. So it's very important that you establish a kind of anchor in each course that you're taking and sort of get initiated, if you like, into the ways of that course. I think that's a large part, what it is that that particular professor expects of you. Because different professors expect very different things, very different kinds of work. So that, I think, is crucial. So that's the prosaic and practical piece of advice. My other piece of advice is this. There are two ways of viewing the university, it seems to me. One of them is as a means to your preconceived ends, right? Like you come into university deciding that there's something you want to be when you grow up, and you choose your university courses accordingly, and you regard the whole university as instrumental to that end, right? So the university becomes a kind of high-level vocational training, but vocational training nonetheless. Then there's another way of viewing the university. And PAL 200 is actually basically pitched towards students who view the university in this other way. And that is as a potentially life-changing experience. When you think about it, those are two very different views of the university. The first one presupposes that you'll leave the university the same person you were when you entered it, right? With the same interests, the same concerns, the same life plan, if you like. The second one presumes you might leave the university a very different person than you entered it, that the courses will open new worlds to you, as a result of which, you'll become a kind of new person. And that, if you like, is the high-minded, idealistic view of the university that I try to pursue in my courses. My courses also aim to be useful, and political science deems them useful, obviously, in making the course required for all political science students. But it's the other view of the university. And let me also say that the reason that I've agreed to become a fellow at St. Mike's many years ago and have persisted in it, all those years, is that I do think of St. Mike's as a place which is devoted to education in that second sense. And one could say generally that this is something that the colleges add to the universities. The colleges tend to be less professional in their approach to education than the university departments, and that's a good thing, because that means the colleges do have more of a notion, have embodied more of the notion of the university as a possibly life-changing experience.
That's a great tip for all students. I mean, I know that a lot of students, even myself, have kind of been on both ends of that spectrum where I'm looking towards an end goal, but I also want to, improve my own life. So I think that that's a really great tip for first-year students. So thank you so much for that. So with that advice, we're going to end the academic orientation, and we wish you all the best with your first year at St. Mike's and the University of Toronto. Once again, thank you so much, Professor Orwin, for coming on today and talking to the first year students.
You're quite welcome. And I'd just like to say to all prospective PAL 200 students that if you do find yourself in the course, don't hesitate, right, to reach out to your TAs, and don't hesitate to reach out to me.